Hello, my name is Jay, and welcome back to my Tech Vault. Today we're going to be taking a look at some different products. We're going to rate them. We're going to use this tier list format that a lot of people are using. I think it's a pretty good idea, and I like it, so we're going to hop on the bandwagon on YouTube and go ahead and do this. So, what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to rank 3 different companies' products: Intel, AMD, and Nvidia, since those are the main 3 that this channel is centered around. Obviously, you could get into other board partners, or you could get in the companies that make laptops. There's a long list of things you could get into, but in reality, it's just those 3 companies that everyone can at least relate to. So, what we're going to do today is I've got about 15 to 20 images. We're going to put them up here. We're going to rate them. I did Photoshop just because it's a lot easier. I've spent like an hour and a half online trying to figure out some template thing to work. It didn't happen. So we're going to S for super. A, B, C, D, E, and F for complete failure. We'll just say that this is kind of like from 10 or 1 to 10. How good was it? So like 1, 10. That's basically what we're going to rate off of. How we're rating things, or at least how I'm rating things, is hype, living up to hype and expectations. If they advertise something, everyone's really hyped up, and it turns out to be complete garbage, that lowers the score. If the product is like just okay, and I'm gonna rate things at the time they were released. So like, for example, if something that was just really hyped up at the time, but later on we look back and it was like, then that of course will probably get a higher score than it would now. So here we go. We're gonna drop our first image down here, and the first image is the GTX 1080 Ti. Now, for the record, this is by far a really good card. I will say that. And when it was originally released, I made a video talking about why it was one of the best releases in a long time, and probably will have for a long time, just simply because of the fact that it was such a good performer in 4K. So I'll probably have to put that up on a B, or maybe even an A. It's really borderline. We'll just leave it at B now because we'll rate everything else. But basically, the 1080 Ti was by far a good 4K card. It wasn't that expensive compared to modern day cards with the 20 series. Obviously, it was expensive. $600, $700 is quite expensive. And money doesn't grow on trees, but compared to the 2080 Ti, it's still a good card. So let's go over here now. The next one we got is, let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, the RTX 20 series. Now, for having no support for the RTX part at launch, I think only one game, and also we had such a problem with the cards being so expensive, like literally inexplicably expensive, like so expensive for the fact that people just would rather buy the last generation than even bother to buy the new cards. So this is probably D. Obviously the cards themselves perform good, but they're ridiculously overpriced, so they get a nice little spot there. What's next? I'm not sure that's gonna work. Yeah, not gonna work. Okay. Next up, we got the Intel. We'll just say this is the 7th gen. We're not even going to go into like the i5s or anything, because honestly, the whole 7th generation at the time was I would say it's even E. And obviously, I said I wasn't going to compare stuff from the current modern view, but the i5 or the 7th generation was really a generation that a lot of people upgraded and were really pissed because Ryzen came out afterwards, and it looked so stupid afterwards. Like, the 7th gen was 4 cores, 8 threads at its max, and it was completely ridiculous for workstation users. And even in gaming now, it looks kind of stupid because 6 cores is a minimum for gaming now with the amount of cores that most modern games use. So really, it's a matter of time before the 7th gen altogether just goes out of date. Let's see. Next up, we've got Ryzen. And we're going to refer to this as Ryzen, the 1000 series. So this has got to be super, and I'm putting it up here for a reason. Back when this was originally coming out, not too many people knew what to expect. We were expecting something that was mediocre. We were hoping that we weren't going to have like something we could cook bacon on. And we were really hoping that it wasn't going to be a disaster. And what it turned out to be was a really powerful, really competitive chip that AMD produced. So I'd have to say it's super, regardless of your fan base or who you're rooting for. I just prefer power, and at the time, Ryzen seriously forced Intel to innovate. And if you look at it, we got 6 and 8 core stuff now from Intel. I personally believe solely because Ryzen forced them to do so. So I'd say Ryzen is definitely super in the fact that it encouraged innovation across the board, and it was actually a pretty good processor. Heck, I've got one in my system right now. So let's take a look at the next image. So our next image is the Ryzen 2. Now, while Ryzen was good, and the second gen was definitely very good in like increasing IPC clock speed, there was a couple issues with memory clocks that were fixed. It was okay. Honestly, I was really hoping for a 10-core option. I feel like more cores would have been better. Also, I think that it was definitely a good processor. I've got one back here too, a Ryzen 2700X. It's just, it's such a, the coolers were nice, of course. They had great coolers, but it really just felt like what Intel used to do with just refresh after refresh of the same processor. So really, I don't see it being any higher than sea level, just because of the fact that it definitely was quite, I don't know, just really just felt repetitive. Next up, we've got a meme, the Apple Pro stand. And I know this is not NVIDIA, AMD, or Intel, but we gotta admit, this is quite an interesting $1,000 stand. I mean, let's take a moment to admire the fact that this sucker has literally, like, it looks like it's maybe 50 bucks at the most worth of materials, and it's probably solid aluminum. So really, we're just taking a look at the fact that this is ridiculously overpriced, and it's practically a joke. So let's just put this down here, because we all know this is where it falls. I'm not even going to try doing that. It literally falls there. Don't even bother. Next up, let's talk about this one. This is a meme, the GeForce GTX 1650. Not only was I not a big fan of the 16 naming scheme that I decided to go with, but this literally has no grounds whatsoever to exist. AMD's Radeon 570 is about on par, even slightly better, for a much lower price, and just because it draws a little bit more power, NVIDIA's like, oh yeah, we can jack up the price. So this is by far a joke. We're just going to leave it there. It is a solid joke, and that's the joke category. That's what we're going to name F now. F is just for joke, freaking joke. So that would be the 1650, because it is seriously a joke. Next up, let's take a look at AMD's Ryzen 3000 series. Now, the Ryzen 3000 series by far was a big surprise, but also kind of an interesting disappointment. A lot of us were hoping for 16 cores off the release, but I think now that the rumors are circulating, we're probably going to end up with that. Also, there is, of course, higher IPC. It does a really good job. Honestly, it's borderline between S and A, because with such a high clock speed increase, it literally pushes Intel on the clock speed in the gaming department, because Intel has always been the king of gaming, and now AMD is really going for that territory, on top of offering 12 and supposedly 16 cores in the future. So really, this is by far what I would consider another innovative area. So I'd have to put it up here, even though I'm slightly disappointed they didn't announce the Ryzen 3000 16 core right out the box. I gotta say though that it's definitely a pretty solid release, and I would say that a lot of us are not released but announcement, and a lot of us are really excited for it, me included. I've got a couple of things set aside so that I can pay for one, get one, and do some reviews on one. So I'm really looking forward to that. Next up is Vega. Yeah. So I'm gonna get a quick tangent on here. So originally when Vega came out, I was actually in the process of buying this computer right here. I was picking out parts. I had an option between a 1080 Ti or wait for Vega, and I was really concerned. I was like, okay, I'll just get a 1080 Ti. I got it for 650 bucks, brand new, off of Amazon right when it came out, and I was really hyped. It was a Founders Edition. Obviously, that's not the best for cooling, but I was like, okay, it looks cool. What do we know is that Vega releases, and it's what we call a disappointment. Honestly, yes, it's a good card for workstation users. The Vega 56 and 64 didn't come out till like later 2017, almost at the end. And honestly, by that time, cryptocurrency was already in full swing. It was extremely overpriced, and nobody wanted anything to do with it. So we kind of just let it be, and it really didn't turn out to what it could have been. It was an okay card. Honestly, it really didn't do much to push NVIDIA, and so a lot of people were really disappointed. So Vega, we'd say, is an E, just because while it wasn't a joke, it was pretty disappointing. And as someone that would consider myself having more AMD products than Intel, and then I have a good bit of both from Nvidia and AMD, but I'd just say that I have a right mind to say that that was kind of disappointing. So let's take a look at Vega 2. Now this is the Radeon 7. I don't know if that's the exact logo, but this is the Radeon 7. That's what it's supposed to be. And so Radeon 7 was, I don't know, interesting. It released, we all were expecting Navi at CES 2019. I was actually watching it live with like 300 other people on my stream, but we were all really hyped up for Navi, and what we got was Vega 7. Now there's nothing wrong with having another card and it not being what we expected, but when the card is on par with a 1080 Ti, which is still old technology, and the 2080, which is obviously kind of new technology, but it doesn't do anything to push the high-end tier, and it's just as expensive as a 1080 Ti was at launch, it was close to being a joke. Because while yes, we all were hoping for a nice AMD card, this was literally just like another 1080 Ti, and nobody was really, honestly, the only way, in my personal opinion, you get higher up on this list is unless you do something to push the innovation in the industry. And this, I cannot say, pushed the innovation in this industry at all. While yes, it was disappointing, it was overpriced, and it certainly did not live up to expectations. So I have to put it in the D category along with the RTX 20 series, just because of really how disappointing it was. Just such a disappointment. In my personal opinion, obviously people buy it. I'm not trash talking the card. I'm just saying that it's really needs to push the innovation. We'll put it up here, just because why not? It definitely was a good attempt, but it just did not do anything to lower the prices or do anything along that line. Now, here is a meme, everybody. This is a well-known meme. This is the RTX 20 series ray tracing, and if you're unfamiliar, RTX actually doesn't all include ray tracing. It does include the advanced AI stuff that they call it. Honestly, RTX, one big joke, because I think currently 3 games support ray tracing. Yeah, Quake, I think, just started it. I gotta say, honestly, this has probably been one of the biggest disappointments and probably one of the biggest failures of the 20 series, because while yes, everyone was really hyped up for ray tracing, and I think it could have been marketed really well, everyone really just wanted more frames. Everyone really wanted 4K 120 hertz or FPS gaming, and that's where everyone really wanted it. Instead, we got ray tracing, and while yes, it pushed the performance boundary up a little higher, it was also kind of disappointing because the performance hit was massive, and also quite disappointing there as well. So while RTX only currently supporting 3 or 4 games, at launch only supporting 1 or 2, and not much adoption afterwards. There was an article I read that just said that RTX adoption has pretty much stopped. So this has probably been one of the most, my personal opinion, a big failure for at least how it was done, especially with Henson Jang sitting there, just saying it just works the 20 times at release. I cannot, with the right mind, recommend getting someone a graphics card solely based for RTX, because it's simply a joke. And not trying to trash talk, but you gotta admit, when there's only 4 or 5 games that will support this, and it's a main selling point of a card, it is, for gaming at least, a joke, a complete joke. So I will have to say that this is going in the F category, not because it's a bad idea, not because of being not liking it, simply because it was implemented horribly, and it was just still not something I'd have to recommend to somebody. You don't want to go for it. I cannot recommend it in my right mind. It is just not just horrible. Well, yes, and to go over again, the i5 or the 7th gen was good, but it was not compared to after 7 or 8 refreshes of 4 cores, 8 threads, not anywhere close. And Ryzen obviously refreshed, but it only did it once. But the 1080 Ti is pretty good. And then of course the Ryzen original and the Ryzen 3000 series both did pretty good to push the industry. And I'm hoping Navi does something good But right now, with NVIDIA raising the prices up, everyone's got to admit, regardless of who you're a fan of, that these companies are doing a little bit, pushing the boundary of what we want to spend, kind of emptying our pockets a little bit. But without further ado, I want to say thank you guys very much for watching. It's been a wonderful video. Sorry about that. And if you're interested, check out the channel for other cool tech-related news, reviews, builds, etc. And what we're going to do in a couple weeks and stuff, we've got some Ryzen 3000 stuff that I'm going to probably purchase them and do some benchmarking. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. If not, have a wonderful life. See you. Hopefully see you again soon. And if not, yeah, have fun. Thank you guys very much for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye.